Hi, it's Marilyn from Marilyn B-style. Welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to talk today about why I became a teacher. So this is actually a three-parter, and we're going to start with number one. I'm really hoping the sound is okay. I realize I've never told the story about why I became a teacher. So in this part of the story, I'm just going to talk about why I initially went into the classroom. I mean, honestly, it kind of started... Okay, there's a bee near me. Please be a bee and not a yellow jacket. We were warned while we were hiking yesterday that there were yellow jackets, and this guy got bit like 6 times. So I have some concerns. Okay, I think it was a bee. I think it smelled me, and I'm not a flower, so we're good. It started when I was a kid. I loved school, even before I started school. I'm the third of 4 kids. So I have 2 older siblings that are 10 and then 5 years older than me. I was exposed to school from a very young age. I was reading when I was 4, like not by memorization. My mom would just give me a book I'd never seen before and I could read it to her. And that's only because I was exposed to so much schooling and academia from like really when I was born. My mom took me along to everything. Is this crooked? Okay, I'm just gonna do a little adjustment here. So my mom actually got me a chalkboard just to play with, and she put it up in our garage, and I used to have like school with my friends, and I'd always be the teacher, or if I wasn't the teacher, I would be like the naughty kid in class that just like always acted up. But even when my friends weren't over, I would set a class up with my stuffed animals. Like I always wanted to be a teacher. There was just something about it that I loved. I loved every single one of my teachers. I can't think of one that I like, especially in elementary school. I cannot think of one teacher that I didn't enjoy having, that didn't like place in me more of a love for learning. Even as a teen, like, you know, when things are different and teachers are not as lovey-dovey, like I still had a lot of teachers that really invested their time and faith in me. And I would lead small groups in my math class. I would tutor students, and like my neighbor, I actually was like a paid tutor for her. Oh, my aunt would call with questions about my cousin's homework. He's younger than me. But she didn't like when he started getting into like 5th and 6th grade, she did not understand the math he was doing. And yeah, and so she would call my mom to get me on the phone to like, she would explain the problem to me. I mean, like, you have to think about, this was like back when there were you could not like text a photo to somebody. Like, she would call from the landline, right? And like explain what the math problem was, read it to us because she could not figure it out. And then I would work through it and call her back and explain how she could teach it to her son, to my cousin. So it was just really like, I don't know, like I always had this love for learning and helping other people learn. And then when I was in college, I went to UC Berkeley, and I did like volunteering and mentorship and tutoring and after school programs in my spare time. I remember talking to my advisor, I think it was like within the first semester of my junior year when I was taking that class, and asking like, what can I do to change my major, or what can I do to add an education minor? And I had none of the prerequisites that met any of that. She's like, honestly, at this point, you'd kind of have to start over. And so that made me really sad, but it didn't deter me. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep taking classes that sound interesting, and they're not going to be on my degree. Like, they're just not going to be there. They're on my transcripts, but it's okay. So I ended up graduating, and my degree is a Bachelor's of Arts in Integrative Biology. And so I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to use this. I have no desire to be in a lab or be on the field doing research. Like, it wasn't my passion. And so I worked through that content. I worked through those courses and graduated, got my GPA up. It was pretty bad my sophomore year. Anyways, that's a different story. Then I started looking into like a multiple subject credential program. And in California, you have to have like these prerequisites before you can apply. And I applied to the one where my husband, who at the time was my boyfriend, where he was going to school, and I got denied twice. I tried to get into their ed program twice, and they didn't want me. I don't know. I think the first time I didn't qualify, and then the second time I did, but I still didn't get in. And so I was like, okay. So I ended up moving back home, and I applied for the Cal State San Bernardino multiple subject credential program, and I got accepted. Yeah, and so that was about a year and a half of work. I think I did like courses over summer because I wanted to get it done as quickly as possible and start student teaching. And it just really cemented my passion for education and just my love for learning and like creative ways to teach students about number sense and like what can you do when the California standards are this way. And this was before Common Core. So what do you do when standards are a certain way and not all students learn that way? Like how can you uniquely approach a concept and teach it to students with different learning styles? I love that. It was just so fascinating to me. Somewhere in the middle of all that, I became a certified substitute teacher. I passed the CBEST and had my bachelor's, and so I was a sub in several districts. And that was a frightening experience. I feel like that's an entire different video. Like, let me talk about substitute teaching. I'd have to kind of like pull out some old files in my brain to talk about that because I don't remember all the stories. I do remember one of my favorite high school substitute experiences, and I'll just talk about it briefly, was at a school in the town where I grew up, and it was a continuation school. And the reason I liked subbing for that high school more than the other high schools is that those students knew exactly what to do. They were there because they wanted to graduate. And so they all took out their packets of work and did their work, and that was it. And if they had a question, they asked me. And it was super easy. So anyways, just want to put that out there. So I was a sub for a long time, couple years. Yeah, and then I finished the multiple subject teaching credential program. And then I went on a job hunt. And that was scary. And I printed lots of resumes and ordered lots of official transcripts. You have to put yourself out there. It's so scary to get out of a program when you're that young and you don't know what you're doing. And I literally applied like everywhere in Southern California and a lot of places in Northern California because I was like, wherever there's an opening, I'll go there. Like whatever it takes. And it was really hard to find a place that was hiring. By the time I graduated, by the time I got my credential, I started the program in 2005, so I think it was 2007-ish. It was February of 2008. I got a job at a charter school, and the reason there was a job opening was that the charter didn't get renewed, and so a bunch of teachers jumped ship in February, and so there were job openings, and I became a kindergarten teacher, and it was so much fun. Because our entire kindergarten team was recent graduates. I think one of us, there were 4, only one of us had a year's worth of experience, or was like, she had been there since the beginning of the school year. The other 3 of us got hired on as people left. But it was so much fun, and it was a great learning experience, and it was full day kindergarten, and it was just, they were great students. Their teacher that was there from September to February was amazing. And I can tell, I never met her, but I can just tell because of how well prepared the students were. And so that was a great first experience. Another one of my first teaching jobs was as a teacher who pulled small groups for test prep. It was at a school. They were hiring teachers specifically to help students who were it's called like on the bubble. So like they're barely proficient, and we wanted to keep them proficient in their test scores. So I pulled 2nd and 3rd graders, and we did test reinforcement, but I tried to make it as fun and engaging as possible. We did a lot of like reading passages that were super interesting. And then every once in a while I'd throw in a really boring one just to remind them like it may not be super interesting when it comes to testing time. So you need to remember these skills no matter what the text is, even if it's not the most exciting thing. But I mostly had them read and write a lot, which always helps all students. And then when testing time was over, we did 2nd grade only, like reading reinforcement, and that was so much fun. We would do sight word games and all kinds of cool stuff. I loved that job. My co-teacher was amazing, and we were complete opposites, but we called ourselves twins, which was it was fun. So then after those 2 jobs, after being a kindergarten teacher for a semester, and then being like a small group testing reinforcement teacher for about a semester, I started going to job fairs, and I was like a little bit jaded, I think. And I remember talking to the hiring, who was it? It's, the person in HR that's in charge of recruiting at a district. They're the ones at the job fairs. I remember talking to several and just being like, you know what, this is a really difficult situation. I feel like I have a lot to offer at a school. And like, I was very blunt and very like sure of myself because I knew what I was capable of. I went to that job fair like ready to say like, here's who I am and here's why I would be an asset to your school district. And so for whatever reason, the person at the job fair for a district like a couple towns over from where I was living basically offered me a job on the spot. He's like, we are in dire need of 7th grade science teachers. And I know you have your multiple subject credential, and I know your heart is for teaching elementary, but we have this dire need for 7th grade life science teachers. And because you're actually K through 8, like general ed, but you have an integrative biology degree, you are able to go and get the supplemental science added to your credential so that you can teach 7th grade science. And I was like, hey man, this is a foot in the door. Like, I think I said that to his face. If this is a foot in the door into the public sector and I can get tenure and transfer to elementary, I'm all for that. Like, I was bold AF. Like, I just was not trying to play around. And so he basically offered me a job on the spot. He said, there are 2 school sites where we can go look and you can just decide which one you want. Like, it was insane. Like, the way that God used my crazy boldness, some would call it arrogance, my boldness along with my degree, along with my passion for teaching and desire to reach students, I was offered a job that ended up being the perfect fit for me. I was scared out of my mind. Middle school teachers, I don't know if you always knew you wanted to teach middle school, but I was scared out of my ever-loving mind because I remembered what I was like in 7th grade, and I was one of the good kids. I'm just going to leave that there. If you want details, let me know in the comments, and I can do another story about what I was like in 7th grade. But I was so like, anyway, so I ended up choosing one of the positions that I felt was just a good fit. I really kind of like jived with the principal, and I think she liked how like straightforward I was with her, because I said the same thing to her face in my interview, that honestly I see this as a stepping stone and I want to get tenure so that I can transfer to another school because I really want to teach elementary school students. But I think she liked my honesty and that I was upfront and confident that I had what it took to be on her staff. So I started teaching 7th grade, and I love the district I was in because in Southern California, well, in that district, I don't know if this is everywhere, they had like a new teacher prep academy, and it was amazing. It was so helpful to like sit there with other first-year teachers, and some of them were veteran teachers, but they transferred to this district for whatever reason, and it was so helpful to just process what are you going to do for the first day of school? What are you going to do in the first week of school? How are you going to react when a student does X, Y, or Z? So we did a lot of like mini case studies. We did lesson planning for the entire first week, and then like if we had time, like the first month of school. So I went in so prepared. I had systems in place for tracking attendance and like assignments and test scores and everything. Like it was such a great prep academy. Like I was so thankful. I haven't taught in another public school district, so I don't know. Let me know in the comments, teachers. Is that what your district does too? I would hope so. I mean, I feel like that makes the most sense because, they were equipping teachers to do their best for all the students. So my first year, I made a lot of mistakes. I rolled into class late. I would not really have lesson plans ready. But overall, I loved it. I really bonded with my students, and I was surprised at how well, I was honestly surprised how much I loved teaching middle school. One part of that was I had an excellent team. My principal placed me under the wing of 2 excellent teachers, veteran teachers who loved each other and just like, they were like my moms. Like I pretty much called one of them mom all year because she just took me under her wing, and she is a strong Christian, and she would pray over me and pray over our classes. And like, it was just the conversation. And then my other mom teacher, which is so funny to say because there's like, I think her oldest daughter is the same age as me, but I feel like there was no way she could be old enough to be my mom. Anyway. was just so cool and like hippie chic, and I just loved her entire vibe. Like, she did not believe anything that I believed, like as far as like religion, but we did believe in the power of education, and we believed in our students, and we believed in each other, and it was just the best. It was just the best team. Like, there were a couple of other problematic teachers on our team, and that made it really difficult. But with the two of them supporting me, like, I really flourished that year. The second year at that school, I wasn't on their team again, and that made me really sad. And I was made the team lead my second year of teaching, and the people placed on my team were two of the problematic teachers from the year before. And oh my gosh, no, it was three. There were three problematic teachers, and they were all on my team, but the other two weren't. And I was so in over my head. I'm like, why was I made the team lead? So that was a really overwhelming situation for me. And I started getting some burnout and malaise, because I just, like, my morale was so low because these three teachers just wouldn't change, and got more and more. One of them was super nice the first year, and then that person got really bitter the second year and had nothing to say except complaints. And I did not know how to handle that. It was just really annoying. Anyways, so I started to get like a lot of malaise with that job, and I was like, I'm ready to transfer now. Now that I've got 2 years under my belt, I'm going to transfer. I'm leaving the school. I can't. If my principal thinks that like it's my job to babysit these teachers and tell them how to act, like, that's not why I'm here. Like, I was getting burnout and bitter. So I was ready to leave. Like, I was ready to jump ship. So I actually went to the person that hired me from that job fair and said, I need to transfer because X, Y, and Z. And I gave him my reasons. And he was like, all right, like, I'll see what's out there. Just apply for the, there's the in-district listings of job openings, and you can apply. And, when they come up, you can see if you get approved. And I did. Except my principal wouldn't let me leave. She was like hardcore fighting to keep me at her school site. And that made me want to leave so much more, because she was a visionary, and she had amazing things that she wanted to try to do, but she wanted to do them all yesterday. So it became very like high pressure on the teachers. And she's like, what if I move you down a grade level? Maybe like having younger students would be more what you're looking for. But the content of 6th grade science, and then I also had to do 6th grade math, which I'm not an expert in, I was so overwhelmed. And I was emailing the people at the district and telling them, like, I need to get out of here. I was also pregnant with my first son. It was just a lot. There were so many things going on. The principal was also like implementing this entire different structure with, I don't know, it was an overwhelming year in general, because of all the things. Anyway, it finally got approved. So second semester, I moved to 1st grade. I had a 1st grade position, and that was the hardest class I ever taught. But this 1st grade class gave me a run for my money. They were the sweetest, but there were students that I just wasn't prepared to teach, and I didn't get the kind of support I needed. And I really realized, like, wow, the grass was greener. Like I thought it would be better in elementary. But every grade level has its challenges. Every single grade level or subject has its pros and cons, right? So I realized that because my expertise is science, like, the reason I ended up loving 7th grade was that I loved the content, and then I connected with those kids. Like, I was able to create lessons with them in mind and really reach them and teach them about all of the content all year long. And I, like, there's part of me that wishes I kind of stuck it out that year after, but I mean, it's fine. Like, God had other things planned, so it's okay. Like, of course it all turned out okay. But that 1st grade class, whew, God bless you, primary teachers. I thought, okay, I taught kindergarten, but it was just very different. It's obviously every grade is really different. 1st grade is definitely not for me. And I asked my principal at that school site if I could switch to another grade level, and she happily complied, because she's like, yeah, I think you would do better with the older students. And she was right. So the following year, I went to fourth grade. And I loved my fourth graders. They were very sweet. They're still little enough to love you dearly and big enough to understand your jokes. I don't think I made any of them cry. I think it was just such a hard transition to go from middle school to first grade, because I was used to like joking around with my students and being a little bit sarcastic. First graders don't understand that. They're such concrete thinkers. They take everything seriously. Yeah, there were a lot of tears that year. Many of them were mine. So my fourth graders, I loved them so much. And I actually got to work very closely with the art teacher, who coincidentally, I was really put off by her the first time I was there, because I was very pregnant with my son. And she was like, when are you due? And I was like, yeah, I have like about 3 more months. I'm like 6 months pregnant. She was like, you look like you could pop any minute. I was like, I literally just told you I have 3 more months. Excuse you. Please don't talk about my body. So here's your little PSA, anyone listening. Don't talk about people's bodies, ever. It's not a helpful conversation. God ended up turning that into a really positive relationship. So it's just funny that she totally rubbed me the wrong way in our first encounter. But I had a lot of her former students. She was a 3rd grade teacher, and then she became the art teacher. And so I had so many questions for her about this particular group of students, because I inherited almost all of her kiddos from the year before. But with her help, we all thrived. That class and the beginning of the year was rough because I was coming off of maternity leave. But the year ended great, and I love those kids. We traveled a long way together. We learned a lot together. So it was a really great year. But then that was the year after that I resigned. At the end of the year, I turned in my resignation. And so that's going to be part 2. I think it's important for me to just look back and reflect on why I became a teacher. Because it's still so important to me. And ultimately, I love education. I've always loved learning. And so helping other people learn is one of my passions. And I think that's a big part of why I have this channel. I love empowering people, to empower other people. And isn't that what we're called to do, just as humans? So anyway, thank you for hanging out with me and in this beautiful scenery. I love it here. I wish we didn't have to leave today. But that's part 1 of my story of my why I became a teacher. So stay tuned for part 2. Make sure you hit like, and make sure you if you're subscribed, hit the notification bell, because part 2 is going to come out sooner than you think. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.